Hello and welcome to Building the Premier Accounting Firm. I'm your host, Roger Knecht, and this is a podcast dedicated to helping you as an accounting professional have the premier accounting firm in your area, getting paid what you're worth, offering quality accounting services. Now, as a podcast, we have each and every week various guests and topics that we address that range from things related to marketing, selling, client onboarding, pricing, client relationships, and so much more. So I invite you to subscribe to the podcast and obviously listen to this and many other episodes to see what it is you can be doing to work on your business. Now, I'm excited to have a past guest on again. This is someone that I'm sure a lot of people will be appreciative of hearing. This is Michelle Weinstein. Michelle is the founder of The Abundant Accountant and helps accountants to grow their firms to seven figures and beyond by making selling fun. She has successfully trained accountants, CPAs, EAs, bookkeepers, and other financial professionals on how to charge higher fees and double their revenue. So one of the things that I want to do is basically thank her for coming back. But Michelle, it's good to have you here.
Yes, it's so awesome to be here. So thanks for having me again. I can't believe it's been 2 years, but I'm very excited to be here again.
When I was getting ready for the show, I have to admit, I was shocked to look back and see how long ago it was, but it's good to have you back. This is going to be fun.
Yes.
The whole idea of this is we regularly have topics that come in regarding marketing, selling, but today we've identified the idea of overcoming objections and negotiations as topics to go into. So I'm just going to jump into this and just kind of set the stage for it. In setting the stage, we've got just some terms I'd like to define. We've got marketing. Marketing, that's where you're going out through various efforts to find those contacts, potential customers, those business owners that you could service with your accounting offerings.
I like to think of marketing as like step that you have to have both. You have to have sales and you have to have marketing. Mm-hmm. But I think a lot of times, and some of you listening might think that they're one of the same, but they're actually not. So like you just said, it's the time you're getting customers. It might be sending an email to a prospect. It might be your Yelp page where you got an inquiry in. It might be, your Facebook posts that you put up. It might be if you're still doing mail, you mailed out postcards to your, local zip code. That's all marketing efforts. The sale begins when that person contacts you via email, maybe a form on your website. Maybe they called you and said, I got referred to you by my neighbor or through Yelp. Anytime you get the lead, that becomes a sale process, which is a conversion process. So there's one of getting the person interested that wants to talk to you. And the next piece is how do you convert them to a client who's going to pay you, what you want and what you're worth, not what you think they can afford or what someone else down the other accounting firm might be charging. Yeah, so those are the two differences between sales and marketing. Because a lot of times, one of the biggest complaints I hear about, I work with a lot of firm owners trying to get to $500,000, $1 million in revenue. And they say, Michelle, I have a lead problem. I need more customers. I need more clients. And I think 95% of the time, they actually have a conversion problem.
Yeah.
And we're talking to the wrong type of clients, the ones that drive us crazy, the ones that don't get you paperwork, the ones that are asking quick questions, and then they want everything for free or at a discount. And that becomes a big strain on the firm. So it's really important to understand the difference between sales and between marketing and how they go hand in hand, but really how the sales piece is the most important piece. Because if you get leads coming in, but you can't convert and you keep doing things at low rates or low fees, and you have clients trying to negotiate with you, and I know we're talking about negotiation today as well, then you're going to be left feeling overworked and underpaid. And that's what I typically hear all the time, Roger.
Yeah. Well, this context that we're establishing for our conversation, I think is so critical because just like you pointed out so clearly, marketing is everything we're doing to make that initial contact for the individual to self-identify, raise their hand, get into our CRM. Now there's someone that we can now contact because we have their name, phone number, email, and we can nurture them. So all that effort on the marketing side is basically to find that prospect, and it can be through referrals and such. But the thing that I think is very important, and you were kind of alluding to it, sometimes we're shocked and disappointed as to the quality of the leads that we're getting, the contacts that we're making, and it's simply because we're fishing in the wrong pond. If we're wanting to get salmon and we keep ending up with, let's say, trout or catfish, it's because you're in the wrong pond. You need to be going somewhere else to do your fishing, and you perhaps need to look at the bait you're also using to determine whether or not you're getting the right size fish and so forth. So that analogy, I think, sometimes helps us to first establish, are you in the right places marketing? But once they've come into our CRM and they are now within our system, when we can nurture them, we're going to nurture them to the point that they're going to see that we're the experts. They're going to understand we have the services that they're needing. And that brings us to the next point, which is at the end of the sales process, there's going to be a meeting. And that meeting is where we get to speak to that business owner. We get to find out about them. And at the end of that meeting, make an offer. And that brings us to what I felt we were going to be discussing today, overcoming objections and negotiations. So if you can imagine, we're at that point where the business owner is considering our services. We've identified what they need. We're now presenting what we have to offer, and we're dealing with overcoming objections, and we're dealing with negotiations. Which do you want to start with first?
I mean, we can get the negotiation stuff out of the way first because that's really easy. I always teach never negotiate your price, never discount your price, never back down on it. You go in with what it is that you want. And if someone's not willing to pay what you want, then they're not a good client for you. Because I think there's so many times there's firm owners that complain to me, well, they've been with they've had 10 generations of their family and businesses in our firm. And it's like, okay, but when you go, buy an airplane ticket or you go purchase a service at, a law office, they don't just come up with whatever price they feel like and negotiate it down. This is not buying a car. This is you're valuable, you're knowledgeable. A lot of you have a CPA and EA, some are CFPs. You have hours and hours of continuing education. You've invested so much in yourself that the second we keep negotiating or letting people ask quick questions and we do free work, we're feeling all the things that drive us nuts. And that's being burnt out, exhausted, frustrated, tired, and all of that just makes it harder for you to really help your clients. And at the end of the day, it's just not worth it. So that's my belief on negotiation, because you're going to keep sacrificing your life and your time every time you try to negotiate or wheel and deal on what you charge. And you don't want to ever have to justify your fees or give a discount. And there is a way you can do it so that you don't have the burnout, you don't have the exhaustion, you don't have to grind out 14-hour days. And I literally hear, Roger, from a lot of people, they feel beat up by their clients. And there's no way that a professional like you should feel beat up, because you should be valued and you should be appreciated. And now you're probably wondering, okay, Michelle, well, what do I have to do?
Well, I'm going to jump in because I'd like to add to this conversation, because I don't want to necessarily sound like I'm disagreeing, but I'm going to say that in addition to your saying that you don't negotiate your price, I 100% agree with that. That is so true. And what you've just explained about perhaps we undervalue our services or our skills and our expertise, and sometimes we in order to get the sale, basically prostitute ourselves and give ourselves away. And that's just not right. So we don't want to leave and within weeks or months regret the decision to acquire this client. And we now have this needy client that we just don't enjoy working with or for. And at the end of the day, we just don't feel we're paid adequately for what we're providing. So we don't want to be in that situation. And so I have to agree with you 100%. That point of negotiation we don't do. But I do, when I'm working with individuals, actually teach a 3-step process. The third step is just like what you said, you walk and you don't compromise. But there are 2 things that we do actually on ours, and I'd be curious your insights on this, your perspective. The first step is we offer the ability to negotiate not their price, but their setup fee. We've found that many firms actually do have a setup fee that's involved in acquiring clients. It's that first month or quarter that they spend establishing the account. And so often that setup fee is that one-time fee that's not going to be recurring from then on. And so whether it's friends and family, whether it's because they're part of a networking group that they're participating in, there's some way you can kind of haggle the setup fee and say, hey, for the fact that you're my sister's brother, I'll give you a 25% discount on the setup fee, or because you're part of this group that I'm associated with, or this association that I'm a member of, I can give you a discount, 50% off of the setup fee. But to your point, we're not negotiating our fee for the services that we're going to be billing them on a recurring basis, month after month after month. That is non-negotiable. And so the first step is, I always teach that if you have a setup fee, that is what you can haggle and offer as a discount to make the customer feel like they're getting something out of the deal, something that they can say, hey, I saved 25%. How do you feel about that first step that I'm sharing?
Well, you're probably not going to like anything I have to say, and you're probably going to think this is a very unorthodox type of response.
Okay.
And you might be upset with what I have to say, but I want to know and let all the listeners know that everyone has their own opinion. And my belief is that if you start the client relationship like that, you're going to have a difficult time. So most of the clients that I've worked with over 100 firm owners. And when we stop the haggling and the discounting, we can now retrain our clients and how they see us. So I would be more open to, instead of waiving a setup fee, maybe adding your family and friends. Why don't we do a quarterly meeting? And I like to add versus reduce. So let's say it's a new business client. You have to set them up, bookkeeping, whatever, accounting, you got payroll, you've got all the different services. And it's going to take a lot of admin time. But, you could offer, by the way, because you're part of the family, because your business and your family has been here for the last 10 to 15 years, I'm also going to request and give you 3 additional meetings with me every year. It will be on your responsibility that you have to book the appointment, but I will provide that so we can really be in touch to make sure that you're saving the most in tax, that your books are up to speed, and that there's nothing unanswered. So what it does for the firm owner is it gives them more touch points with the client, which also is upsell opportunities. And then it also puts the ball in their court. Most people are going to forget or not book those calls. That's just how it is. There's so many times people buy packages of this and they do it once and they forget about it in the future, unless they're like me and they put in their calendar and schedule it. But unfortunately, I don't think many people do that. It's going to be a smaller percentage of people.
I agree with you. Yeah, I do the same.
So because I've just seen so many firm owners get, screwed and taken advantage of. And, you probably wonder, why do you talk to clients this way? Why did you agree to meet with these clients? And you're so incredibly busy, and that you think that every client meeting might become a waste of time. And the reason is because we keep feeling beat up, because we give discounts, because we haggle, because we negotiate, because we feel like we have to justify our fees. Where if we do a 180 on that and say, okay, what would be the value of 25% off, but actually benefit me and the client?
Yeah.
And a client meeting, every quarter or twice a year, that's going to go a lot further, because then you don't have to just cross your fingers and go, God, I hope they don't try to haggle again with me in the future.
Yep.
I mean, I'm working with 25 people right now in one group that I've got, and all of them feel like they beat their head against a brick wall all the time. And, I know you fear sometimes clients might leave you because they're going to get a better deal somewhere else, but that's just a change in your sales conversations, which is a much longer conversation than what we have time for today.
Yeah.
But ultimately, you want time and freedom, and you want to work less and make more money. And in order to do that, we can't haggle like the dealerships. We can't just say, oh, well, so-and-so firm down the street's going to do it for this, so I'm going to do it for that, because now you're still a commodity.
So what I hear you doing is a very common sales strategy, which is the consumer typically wants to know they have one of two things, because there are generally one of two types of consumers. One is they want to know that they got a deal where they got whatever it is they're acquiring or purchasing for less than the common purchaser. And the other wants to know they got more for their money, meaning you added the value.
Yeah.
Some are well, basically it's you're typically dealing with one or the other. And what I'm hearing you say is we don't even want to really offer that discount option. We want to increase the value and appeal to them on the value that they acquired or got more than typically everyone else. And therefore we're meeting that subconscious need that they got a good deal out of the situation. So I do like what you're saying.
I've just dealt with and worked with so many firm owners, and I think we have to change the way the industry operates, and that you can't compare a firm owner to firm owner. It's not an apple to apple comparison. Yeah. This isn't Amazon.com where, you can manufacture this toy for this price. It's like, everyone is different.
Yeah. So at this point, we've already discussed a number of things related to negotiating. And obviously, one of the things that we agree on is we need to stop basically discounting our services and not valuing what it is we do. So I completely agree with you on all that. So let's now move into, for lack of a better term, overcoming objections or questions. First of all, I wanted to just ask you, how do you typically refer to it? Because I know a lot of people disfavor the term overcoming objections. So how do you typically refer to it?
Well, I mean, objections are typically, when you go to the doctor back in the day and the doctor had the little triangle device and they would hit your knee and then your knee just jerked up and kicked up because it hit like a little reflex. That's basically what an objection is. An objection is just a belief. And I think a lot of times we think that objections are a bad thing, but they're actually a good thing, because it can lead to understanding or clarifying concerns. It could clear up misunderstandings, and it will get you closer to a client engaging your firm. So being really confident in understanding the different types of objections and how to handle them without being irritated or getting frustrated, getting defensive is really important. And there is a negotiation tactic. So one of my favorite authors is Chris Voss, and he wrote the book Never Split the Difference.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And part of negotiation is actually empathy. And when you empathize with someone where they feel heard and understood, that can really help you when overcoming an objection. So, let's say someone is objecting based on price, like you're too expensive or something like that. You could say, well, it sounds like you have a reason for hesitating in saying that. Is there an obstacle here that we need to overcome? And really diving in deeper so you can understand what concerns they have, but thinking about how they feel in the moment. So when you empathize, it's really about thinking how the other person feels. And that is the form of negotiation. That type of negotiation, I totally am good with in sales conversations. It's the type where we're negotiating our price, I'm not a fan of. But if we're talking about empathizing and thinking about how your prospect might feel and why they might think it's expensive, why are they hesitating? What obstacles are in their way? Maybe they're dealing with a bankruptcy. Maybe they're getting a divorce. You have no idea, but our goal is to try to see if they can help answer that and express what's going on. And the best way to do that is to empathize with them, putting yourself in their shoes.
This idea of empathizing, I'm very familiar with it. We refer to it as validating. We want the person to feel heard and understood. And so we first, in that stage, just try to repeat back and clarify. So what I'm understanding you're saying is, and I want to even step before that, the thing that we always try to do is with the questions is first of all recognize that they're actually buying signs. If they're not interested, they're indifferent, then they have no more questions to ask. So the questions themselves are merely signs of curiosity. They're trying to justify in their own mind one way or another, making the decision. And so the questions are just them getting clarity and trying to make sure that there's an understanding. And so I first of all try to help everyone understand that the questions are a good thing and that we should be looking forward to them, anticipating them. And when they come, we should be happy because they're signs that the person is trying to, in their own mind, kind of justify, rationalize this purchase that is clearly about to be made. So
Yep.
that's one of the things that's helpful. And then you go to this point where you're talking about the empathy. The empathy is so critical. The way we position it is we talk about, rather than it's win-lose or win-win, it's there's a need that the customer has. They've already shared and we've identified they have a need. There's a thing that needs to be done. And we both agree that it's important. So rather than you and me be with two different agendas, why don't we collectively, as two grown adults, two peers, two business owners, try to address that problem, that question, that need? And all of a sudden we're collaborating. We're like, well, let's figure this out together. So you've talked about empathy.
Yep.
What's the next step of overcoming the objections, if we're going to use that as the cliche-ish term?
Yeah, well, I think what you said, validating so they feel heard and understood, because I feel like they're a little different. So one is validating that they feel heard and understood. So what I'm hearing you say is that you think this is expensive or you think my prices are too high, and then thinking about from your conversation. So you do need some context. So whatever they said in their sales conversations, but I can give you a couple of ideas. If let's say you're meeting with not the firm owner for some strange reason, or it's a husband and wife team, it could see, it sounds like I'm putting you in a bad spot and that you're powerless right now. Or it, like I was sharing earlier, it seems like you have a reason for hesitating, because if they say it's too expensive, that is a hesitation. So really thinking about, from whatever they shared with you in your sales meeting, how are they feeling? Is it really about the price? Because there's, and I'm sure you've talked about it here, but I believe that there's a few different types of objections. You have the objection where, they're not 100% sold yet. They've got some more questions. They need more information. But then you also have people that are going to stall you. They've not made a decision and they're not going to be able to ever make it. And they're pretty much embarrassed about it. So they're just stalling and dragging you along. Or, you have the people that kind of give you like a false objection. Like that's not really the real thing. Like they say it's about the price, but then it's really about, well, I don't even have a credit card and I'm in bankruptcy, but I'm too embarrassed to tell you that. And they don't want to hurt your feelings. So they say something else. So there's all these different nuances, Roger, but I think it's really about thinking from the hour sales conversation you just had, what is going on in this person's life? How can you put yourself in their shoes?
Yeah.
And, I've been practicing empathy for a while. And when I met Chris Voss, he always said the best way to learn in what they did with hostage negotiations and other things is volunteering on the Suicide Hotline. So I've done that for over a year now, maybe almost 2 years. And literally to have someone not, want to complete suicide, all they want to do is felt heard and understood, because they've been pushed into a corner for so long and the pain is so great. And so for your clients, it's really not any different. It's just really imagining, how do they feel? How do you get to that underlying emotion? And I think a lot of times with all the firm owners I've worked with, we don't think about the emotions. We just want to get to the paperwork. Here's my price. Here's my quote. Here's my proposal. Take it or leave it. And that's not why people buy. People buy based on pain and emotions, challenges and emotions. That's why people will pay you premiums. If you're just a commodity and you want to be like H&R Block or one of those, and they have a price sheet, that's kind of like going to Amazon.com. When I go buy my vitamins, it's like, okay, this guy is doing it for $36.25. I can buy this bottle here for $4.10. So we have to listen between the line and listen for what's not being said. Because the thing that's being said is the price, that you're too expensive or whatever. But what's in between that? What do you think they're saying from the sales meeting to the time they give you the objection that's been unsaid.
So this idea of emotion, I think, is hugely important, especially when I work with accounting professionals, simply because we're thinking that this is a rational decision.
Right.
They're just thinking it through in a very logical way. But you and I are both agreeing that honestly, at the end of the day, sales more often than not are an emotional decision. And there's that gut feel, they're just trying to fill out the situation. And so I like that you're bringing in this element of we've got to be sensitive to the emotions in the room and whether or not we're truly hearing the person on the other end. And are we looking for those telltale signs of indications of, like you were alluding, bankruptcies, divorce,
Yes.
embarrassment? There's a lot of
Yeah.
things that
What's the
could be making that
unspoken?
decision. Yes,
Yeah.
yes. So that's very important. You alluded to this, and I want to go back to it. I think sometimes there's also this issue of us projecting. That's the term we use, projecting
Yep.
our concerns when it's really not even the customer's issue. And I'll just real quickly illustrate it and get your thought. Sometimes we're thinking it costs too much. They've never said anything. They never mentioned it costs too much, but we volunteer. So is it that it's too expensive? And then they, to save face, they're going to simply just say, well, yeah, it's just too much. This is more than I thought. So in other words, it's not their objection. We led the witness, as a lawyer would do. And by leading the witness, they just took the easy way out and said, yeah, that's my problem. How do you deal with that issue when you're training sales?
Yeah. I mean, I think it just goes back to empathy. It goes back to just listening and validating and listening and validating and having someone feel heard and understood. I think that's ultimately the most important thing. And I would say to listen to Never Split the Difference, Chris Voss's book. It will work in your personal life. It will work in your marriage, with your kids. It's a daily practice. It's not something that I think most firm owners, uh, I would say 99%, I don't. It's not ingrained in us. It's not even ingrained in me. It takes me daily practice and weekly volunteering on the Suicide Hotline. It's just practice. You have to get your reps in.
Yeah. So what you're describing here is we need to be very attentive to the emotions in the room and
Yes.
be empathetic as you're describing. We want to find the real objection, which is through open-ended questions rather
Yep.
than projecting what previous people have said, what we might be thinking. Just let them speak for themselves and they can explain themselves.
Yeah, and I think also without projecting, one of the other things that I teach all the time and on repeat is remember that this process is about them. It has nothing to do with you.
Thank you.
And I think a lot of firm owners keep making this about, I edit and review all my students' homework. And it's always like tying it back to their services and how they're going to help them. And to be honest, none of that matters. This whole process from the sales, not the marketing lead generation. I'm talking about the sales to overcoming the objection that's part of the sales process. It all has to do with them. If
Mhm.
at any moment you say, well, this is for me, or this is how I can help you, we're not making it about them anymore. Now you're back to you. And so it's really important to differentiate that because that's the part that's going to set you apart from every other firm owner. And it's just really requires practice to do something different, to think about the emotions, to hear and understand where they're coming from, to think about what emotion are they feeling right now that maybe they haven't expressed, or based on the challenges they're having, what might they be going through in their life? It has to be about them 100% of your sales conversation. Anytime you make it about you or how you're going to help them and why you're the best and all that, we're taking focus off them. Imagine like they're at the Super Bowl and they're the, halftime show. It has to be about them the whole time. During the halftime show has nothing to do with the players who are in the Super Bowl. It only has to do with the artist that's performing the halftime show.
Mhm.
And our clients are taking that stage. They have the microphone. We're here to watch and listen. And when we can watch and listen instead of keep talking and talking over our clients,
Yeah.
interrupting our clients, bragging about all the certifications and things that you have, we actually lose interest from the client side. The clients don't see that because they don't buy that way. Us as human beings buy based on feelings and emotions. So if we can get them to the place where they see they have a challenge, and yeah, you might be the best to fix it, and you understand their emotional state, then you'll have a very different conversation. You'll have less objections as well. The objections sort of dissipate the more that you can listen and understand their underlying emotions about how they feel.
I couldn't agree with you more. When you're working with an individual that's considering your services, if you've built the rapport and they felt in the conversation that you were listening to them, and as you were mentioning, being empathetic to their situation, the choice to make the decision becomes so much easier and the questions become far fewer
Yeah,
because they're feeling this is the right fit. This is the solution I need. And then price
totally.
becomes less and less of an object as well. So
Exactly.
yeah, this is great.
Yeah.
Let me switch gears. You've brought it up a few times. I definitely want to ask about it. You
Okay.
say you've volunteered for some time with the Suicide Hotline.
Yes.
That's for a lot of people a very dark place, and oftentimes these people are in their minds trapped, and because of how they feel trapped and cornered, they feel there's no way out, and the solution is in their minds, let's just end it and I'll make everybody's lives better. So I,
Correct.
I'm curious, what have you learned going through these last few years being that hotline resource to these people? What have you learned about yourself and about life and people in general?
I mean, I think I've learned probably a lot of, what people are challenged with here is that, you want to talk over people, you want to interrupt, you want to think it's all about you, you want to, there's just so much stuff. But I think the biggest piece in that I learned is that when we listen and empathize, and what Chris Voss teaches is he uses the word label. So I'll give you a few examples of what that means. And it typically starts with it sounds like, it looks like, or it feels like. And if someone is struggling, and especially in the last week or two, I mean, they're even more short-staffed and need more volunteers for anyone that wants to practice empathy because of the 988 number. So now there's a 911 for suicide, which is 988. So the calls, I think, doubled or tripled, and on the chat line too. Um, but it's really like sharing, hey, Roger, it really seems like you're faced with a lot of changes in your life right now. I get why you have the mental clutter and the frustration going on. And, I want you to know you're not alone in that. So that would be like an empathy statement with a label. Um, or if they say my family or something about their family, you could say, it seems like your family does really mean a lot to you. And I'm sorry that you're going through all of this. It must be really frustrating. And stuff like that, these people have never heard before. You're just empathizing with how they feel. And that, it must be a lot of weight on their shoulders,
Hmm.
for someone who's stressed out. If you have a business client who comes to you and is like totally stressed out, you could say it seems like that's really weighing heavy on you. Like you're carrying around 40-pound dumbbells on each shoulder, you know? Like that is saying, I get how you feel, and you're sharing it and labeling it back to them, and where they go, yeah, that's exactly how I feel. And sometimes I also am working on like, picturing it. Like, it sounds like you've been in a really dark place for a while. Like the lights are all on. And if someone says everything's going to be okay, it's like turning on a light switch when really you're in this dark, dark place because no one gets you. So those are all just different ways to empathize. And that's really what I've learned in my volunteer work. And I always do love volunteering. And this volunteering also helps me help others, which is like why I'm talking about it today.
Yeah.
Because if we just start doing that at home with our families, with our kids, it makes a huge difference. And I've caught myself plenty of times totally irritated, with the like Amazon delivery here's a prime example.
Prime.
My Amazon says they delivered something and it never showed up. How many times do you call and yell at the people who have nothing to do with your delivery? But we're so irritated and so heightened that, we are not our best selves. So practicing empathy could be just with them. I bet you could say, like, hey, Amazon, I'm a high maintenance client of yours. I order a lot of things, and you probably hear about complaints all day long. And, I'm going to share a complaint, but I hope that you know that I'm here for you and that I'm not going to drive you nuts. But I imagine that this job is really difficult. And if you start your conversation like that, you're going to get a lot of cool things. You're going to get people refunding you right away, getting your order back out for delivery, because they're never talked to that way.
Yep.
And so that's what I'm learning too, and how I can trickle that into my personal life, because we're all human, you guys. We all have the knee-jerk reaction. Like, oh my God, I can't believe they didn't deliver this again. And it says it's delivered and it's not, because it happens to all of us. But if we can just sit back and go, how does that person feel dealing with the 1,000 phone calls during their shift of people complaining about their orders? Yeah, that must really suck. Right? Like, you could even say that, I imagine that this is a lot of work, and that dealing with irate customers is exhausting.
Exactly. I think your example is very, very helpful to understand this point, because so many people have these frustrations and they go to a large organization and there's this department, this individual that is basically there to resolve these. And so they're going call after call after call from problem to problem to problem, and everybody's in a amped up emotional state. They're frustrated and angry. It's directed at them. It feels like a personal attack, and perhaps oftentimes is, but that individual you're speaking with had zero to do with the situation at hand.
Yes.
It's not their fault that whatever has happened. They're there to try and help resolve it within a certain parameter. But to start the conversation like you did, this is a person, hey, I'm sure you just got off of a pretty hectic call. I don't want to be one of those. So this is my situation. And treat him like a person who's there to help you resolve that situation. And you're going to get much further. And I like that. The other thing I would like to just throw in here, and it's related to your work on the Suicide Hotline, is just coincidentally, the other day I was listening to a podcast and it was addressing suicide. And I happened to have an episode that we had a PhD on that does therapy, and it was regarding mental health issues. And it's one of the more popular episodes that we have. And the feedback that we got from that were basically a lot of gratitude, because it's interesting in this listener base, my listeners right now, someone hearing this today may be in a state of depression or knows someone that is. And in some ways, suicide is considered as a thought. Unfortunately, there are a number of people who know of individuals who have attempted or have committed suicide. And so this is a lot closer than I think we're willing to admit as a society. And so to be able to have it as an open dialogue, something we can discuss and recognize that there are mental challenges that we each face at times in our lives. We go through phases. And if we can be a healthy resource to those who are facing that challenge today in their own situation, that's so much better than letting them try and do this on their own. So any of the listeners that are listening, don't feel as if you have to go through this by yourself. Feel free to reach out. And if it's not someone like a friend, a family member, a minister, someone that you can lean on and just be heard.
Or just call 988.
That's what I was going to say.
Because now it's available, and there's plenty of firm owners who have opened up and shared, with depression, anxiety, the overwhelm, the grinding 14 hours a day, sacrificing time with their family and friends, the horrific tax seasons I've heard of. I know that sometimes these thoughts have gone through your mind, and that it's okay, and that you're not alone, and that there are people like me who are volunteering and well-trained to support you and hear you and listen to you with a no judgment zone.
Yep.
And that's what you deserve, because your mental health is as important as your physical. We're all real quick to call 911 if we need it. And we all need to get real quick as well to call 988, because you deserve to have that. And it's not only for suicide, it's also if you're just in an emotional crisis,
Yes.
panic
Yes.
attack, anxiety attack. We do grounding exercises. We do breathing exercises. Anytime you feel like your mind is about to explode out of your brain, or, you're losing your mind. I've heard that. Just pick up the phone or call, and you can also do chat on your text or on your computer.
Well, I appreciate that we had this conversation. My mom was like you on the suicide hotline, and
Oh,
there's some amazing stories, and it's a good resource that people need to be aware of. So I'm glad we
totally.
were able to share that 988. So thank you for that. Last question for you.
Yes.
Last question. Your dog just had surgery. What was the
Oh,
surgery? How's the dog doing?
oh, she's good. It was so funny yesterday. Her vet posted on Instagram because he posts his surgeries, and he called her her name's Mila, and he called her the little French warrior. So she's a French bulldog, and she was unfazed after emergency stomach surgery last week. She basically
Oh,
got into a pound of uncooked rice. I was out of town, and my intern was watching her, and well, I guess her dad and brother were supposed to be watching her. Clearly, she was totally on her own and found a bag of rice, ate a hole in it, and yeah, after a day, they took X-rays, and her stomach was full to the brim of rice, uncooked. So they had to
yes.
do gastrotomy. But she's on the up and up, but she's got this scar she's not allowed to touch. So I
Wow.
put a T-shirt on her, and I cut it all up and made it so it fits, so her stomach doesn't rub against anything.
Yep.
But I had to clean it this morning, so you have to keep it clean because she likes to rub and scratch, and she's a puppy. She's 16 weeks old, and we've already
Oh
been
my
through this.
heavens.
I know. She's
That
basically a
is young.
vacuum cleaner. Any food on She'll find anything on the ground. She will do anything for food, even uncooked rice. And he said, and all the nurses were like, I have never seen this before. I'm like, yeah, I did not expect to come home to this, but she's
Well, keep that vet on speed dial.
oh yeah, he made a mistake. He gave me his cell phone number. But I'll do the proper channels and call the vet, the office if needed. But yeah, we're connected on cell phone and Instagram now. I said I'm not going to any other vet. Like, you took care of her, you saved her life. Because if he didn't do surgery, yeah, I don't know. She probably wouldn't be here right now.
Yep,
So
yep. That is unfortunate. Well, I'm happy to hear that things are on the mend, and that is awesome. So that is great. Well, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to just kind of wrap a few things up here. I do have a special offer for our listeners, something that I want everyone to be aware of. Michelle has been kind enough to give us access to a webinar that she's done. It's so that you can charge top dollar for your services. So go to the episode description, and in the description, we'll provide for you the information you need to have access to that webinar and learn a little bit more about what you can be doing so that you can, in fact, charge with confidence and get paid what you're worth. In addition to that, I'll put the book reference that she's alluding to that she spoke of earlier, The Never Split the Difference. That's a great read. I'm sure you'll find that very helpful and interesting. And then as well, I'll also provide information regarding Cut to the Chase. It's a sales philosophy strategy that you can easily implement within your firm that is basically the steps you can follow in the conversations you're having to ensure that you're just moving comfortably along towards the sale so that you can actually get the clients you deserve. So with that, check out the episode description so that you can literally get all these excellent resources and in fact work on ways that you can close the deals and get the clients you need. Now, with that being said, let me just do a quick summary. At the very beginning, I liked our conversation of distinguishing between marketing and selling. I know that there's a lot of accounting professionals that do very good at one of those and struggle with another. And so it's great that we were able to distinguish between marketing efforts, sales efforts. But the other thing that is so helpful here is then the conversation we had about negotiation. I think the telltale thing from that is just we agree that we shouldn't be discounting our fees and services. We need to recognize that we have the credentials, the experience, the expertise that we need to bring to each of our clients, and in doing so, be paid for that, and we shouldn't compromise. The other related thing to that was overcoming objections. Questions are not the obstacle. They're actually buying signs. It's the curiosity. It's them trying to understand and justify the purchase they're about to make with us. And I liked how she was able to show that empathy is such a critical part of that. Are we listening? Are we paying attention? Are we hearing some of the signs that help us better understand their situations and, more importantly, empathize with them so that they can actually more comfortably interact with us? And at the end, we just recognize that sales literally is, in fact, an emotional decision. Are they feeling comfortable? Are they feeling heard? Are they feeling understood? And in all of that, I think we're going to be able to increase our closing rates and get the clients the engagements that we deserve. And then lastly, I thought that conversation that we just now had about suicide prevention, the hotline 988, so helpful, so important. Whether it's yourself or someone that you know, be there, listen, and be able to provide to them the resources that are needed for us to sometimes navigate those hard, difficult times that we may face in our lives. So those resources are there to be used. And I think we need to remove the stigma that's sometimes associated with mental health and let people just more freely express themselves as they're dealing with some of the challenges and issues that they're facing emotionally. So loved the conversation. And of course, definitely want to wish a quick and speedy recovery to the dog. That is wonderful. 16 weeks is a little young.
Yeah, I know. Mila's recovering. And I also wanted to share, my boyfriend has a mental health awareness podcast, a suicide prevention podcast, where he's had a lot of the top therapists and authors on there talking about mental health and suicide to remove the stigma. So it's called Before You Kill Yourself. It's on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and everywhere. But it's a great podcast to listen to if you are struggling with your mental health or depression, anxiety, panic attacks, and really want to hear from some of the experts. So I just want to make sure to share his resource as well.
Well, if you could do me a favor, maybe send me over that information and I'll add it to the episode description for everyone. And that would be perfect.
Yep, I'll send you the link.
Did you have a closing thought as well? Anything that you wanted to leave as a final point?
If you're sick of grinding 14 hours a day and being exhausted and sacrificing time with family and friends and really want to learn how other successful accounting and tax firm owners are charging top dollar for their services, all while getting paid on time and in full and upfront, then make sure to go to chargehigherfees.com and register for the webinar. And I look forward to maybe talking to some of you to really put an end to that, because there is a better way and it is possible. So this is for accounting and tax firm owners or, bookkeepers, anyone in the accounting and tax field.
Perfect. Well, Michelle, I want to thank you again for being on the show. I'm glad we had the conversation we did. It's an extension of the marketing sales conversation that we had before. So this was a great addition. As for the listeners, I do want to encourage you to subscribe to the podcast. Would love to have you receive notifications as to each and every episode as it comes out. We do release these on a weekly basis and invite you to check out the previous episodes, all the various conversations we've had, especially the previous one with Michelle as well. In addition, we're asking for reviews. Give us some comments. We'd love to see what everyone's thinking of the show and what we can do to maybe get the better episodes, more of them, maybe talk about relevant topics. We're always looking for feedback. So that being the case, definitely take advantage of this. If you would like to apply these principles or learn more, reach out to us here at Universal Accounting Center. You can contact us at 801-265-3777, or you can visit us at universalaccountingschool.com. But with that being said, always remember this: if it's about accounting, it is universal. Take care and have a great day.